Dear friends, on behalf of the network of Kurdish academics and professionals, Kurtakat Germany, I welcome you all to our today's panel debate, the Kurdistan region of Iraq, challenges and opportunities in politics, economics, and society. As I'm not an expert in this field, I just want to give the floor to our today's moderator, Hoshman Ismail, an academic from University of Reading. Thank you very much, Hoshman, for moderation of today's panel. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Jasim, and nice to see you again all. And thanks for giving opportunity to us and everyone else to participate in today's discussion with regards to the Kurdistan region of Iraq, the challenges and opportunities in politics, economy, and society. Ladies and gentlemen, as Jasim just mentioned, my name is Hoshman Ismail. Thank you for joining our seminar discussion, the challenges and opportunities in politics, economy, and society. So today, our focus is mainly on the Kurdistan regional government. The KRG flourished from grassroots, where the people took the streets in the early 1990s to overthrow the then Ba'athist rule of Saddam Hussein. Following the overthrow of that regime later in 2013, so I'm not going to discuss much about history. Probably it will be covered by you. So in 2013, the KRG was often referred in a positive term as the other Iraq, or probably some people called Erbil or Hawre, the capital of Kurdistan, as the Dubai, or an alternative like similar to Dubai. However, the KRG is in reality overcome by acute structural problems that are often covered up by government officials, journalists, and academics, or viewed as problems stemming from the central government in Baghdad. So really blaming many of the structural faults and what many journalists call a big corruption, blaming on Baghdad. Full of these promises as parliamentary democracy, often achieving de facto autonomy from Saddam Hussein's Iraq in 1991, the KRG has since reverted into a political duopoly dominated by two families, mainly. Then the families, they have controlled the parties of Kurdistan Democratic Party, that's the main one, and then the second largest is the Patriotic Union of Kurdistan. These two parties control it's not a state, but it's a quasi-state institution at all levels, the military, the internal security forces, and work to prevent authentic democratic discourse by restricting free access to government information, arresting critical journalists and political activists, and funding affiliated media enterprises. Moreover, they oversee a pervasive patronage system fueled by the region's oil industry and budget transfers from the Iraqi government that gives public sector jobs to those perceived as politically loyal and allocates contracts to party-affiliated businesses. So in order today to further this discussion, please join me in welcoming our panel members for today's seminar. Mr. Kamal Chomani, who's a journalist in Germany, is going to cover current political developments, for example, freedom of speech and media freedom, economic crisis mismanagement. Our second speaker is Mr. Hawre Ahmed, who's Executive Director of Kurdistan Center for International Law, who holds MA in Human Rights at Erlangen University in Germany. I hope I've said it right. Is that Erlangen? Is that right? Yeah, great. So he's going to cover aspects of international law in the context of South Kurdistan. Also, our speaker, last but not the least, of course, Mr. PhD candidate, Ms. Dastan Jasim. She's a PhD candidate at German Institute for Global Area Studies in Germany. She's going to cover current developments in South Kurdistan, focusing on foreign policy aspects. So first, I now give the floor to Mr. Kamal Chomani. Please, Kamal, start as you wish, as you like.
So thanks, Hoshman, and thanks for Kurdakat for organizing it. I'm very happy once again to be co-panelist with Dastan Khan and also Hawre, and welcome all other participants. So talking about Kurdistan region of Iraq, as you said, you beautifully describe it, how the Kurdistan developed and what is the current situation, political, economic, socio-economic situation in the Kurdistan region. And after this 30 years plus of the KDP-PUK duopoly in the Kurdistan, so sadly, we are facing a lot of challenges at the moment. However, despite those challenges that we will be discussing during the panel, there are also lots of opportunities. So if I start with the opportunities, is that, first of all, currently the Kurdistan region is a young population. That's a very opportunity for the Kurdish people, for the Kurdistan region to revive and to evolve. Why I'm saying this, coming back to the recent protest movements in the Kurdistan region, starting from the beginning of post-Saddam Hussein dictatorship, overthrowing the Saddam Hussein dictatorship. So starting the protests, and they are still being continuing. So we had a sort of Kurdish Spring in 2011, but at the end of 2021, we also have students' movement, a students' protest. And the students' protest, they have been somehow, cracked down for a long time, but again, all in a sudden evolved. And the evolution, the revival of this protest, for me, is a hope that, our young generation, that they have neither lived under the Saddam Hussein regime nor during the civil war of the Kurdistan region. They have great hopes. They want a better Kurdistan. And if you look at the recent Iraqi elections that we are still struggling with forming the new Iraqi government that we will be again discussing. And look at the numbers. Less than 50% of the population of Kurdistan region participate in the elections. That means, despite all the challenges and problems in Kurdistan we have, the population of Kurdistan, the people of Kurdistan, they have not abandoned the ideas of freedom, liberation, liberty, freedom of women, democracy, social and economic justice. We supported the Kurdish revolution before 1991 for these values. We wanted a better Kurdistan. That's why we fought against Saddam Hussein regime. Each Kurdish family, they have a martyr, or at least they know a martyr that's their relative. So the idea of the Kurdish revolution died. We no more have a sort of, like you see a lot of people are angry, and sadly, some people are praising the former dictatorship, which is, for me, of course, it's very sad, but at the same time, it shows that they are not they are not praising, in a way, Saddam Hussein, but rather their nostalgia for the values that they were supporting the revolution. And I think, for me, this is the biggest opportunity. And right now, although the Kurdistan region election may not be held in October 2022, as announced by Kurdistan region President Nechirvan Barzani. However, as I have seen, lots of people are discussing now how to get rid of this quagmire, how to get rid of this current political situation that we have a sort of authoritarian regime in Erbil, and also we have the current duopoly. And look at all the challenges that we have. If I talk about challenge, one of the biggest challenges will be, maybe Hawre will further discuss about the recent Iraqi Supreme Court decision, which how to the KRG how to be able to deal with the decision, because this is a huge decision. This is not like a political statement made by Sadr or Al-Maliki. This is a decision made by the highest Iraqi Supreme Court, which recently also expelled one of the nominees of the Iraqi presidency race. And it is a court that none of the Iraqi politicians are able to go against, because that's the only court in Iraq which has a sort of reputation. So how to deal with it? And look at the KRG leadership, which is again one of the biggest challenges for the Kurdish population in Kurdistan. And the current KRG leadership are unable how to deal with the situation, because this KRG leadership has nothing to do with the aspirations of our people. And whatever our people believe, this leadership has nothing to do with that. And they also completely abandoned the values, the revolution that we had before the 1991. So this is a huge challenge, how to deal with it, because Iraqi government now, there's a decision. So the KRG may not be able to export its oil. And the Iraqi government has already made the decision to cut the funds of the Kurdistan region. And still, we do not have a KRG leadership or a Kurdish leadership in Iraq where they can deal with Baghdad properly. And Iraq, instead of being an opportunity, because of this leadership, is becoming a threat to the Kurdish people and the Kurdistan region. Because let's not forget, Iraq, as compared to the other countries, it is the only country that the Kurdish rights have been recognized constitutionally. And the constitution of Iraq, which something that we can fight for, instead of fighting for, we are also, the Kurdish parties are fighting for their own interests. So the KDP, PUK, Talabani, Barzani family interests have victimized, sacrificed all the Kurdish interests in Baghdad. So this is a huge challenge that we don't know how to deal with. And then there are other challenges. Look at the Peshmerga forces. The Peshmerga forces that we have, instead of, at some point, almost Kurdish people were worshipping this Peshmerga force. And right now, for me at least, it's one of the militias, not very much different from other militias in Iraq, that they are killing people. And look at how they are treating the protesters, how they are treating the opposition parties. Even they are being used, the Peshmerga and the security forces, to consolidate power, the family rift within. Look at what is happening within the PUK. Look at during for example, in 2015, when we had the former Speaker of Parliament and the former opposition party that they wanted to amend the presidential law, and then there was a coup over the parliament. The parliament was closed for 2 years. So all in all, I want to give a chance to the others and then to discuss more in detail. There are lots of challenges in Kurdistan region, and I don't think that the current leadership can overcome this. People don't trust them. There's no trust between the population and the government, and there's no change movement. Look at even the Islamists, that they are more ideological, and somehow they have within the PUK there's no trust anymore within the political party. So in this situation, I don't think we will be in a better position next year or in the next 5 years as far as we have this current duopoly. And then the bigger challenge is how to get an alternative to how to overcome this challenge, to overcome this reality of the Kurdistan region. So I think we should not talk anymore, at least, about how the Kurdistan region is, how horrible it is, how horrible the leadership is. I think we should change the debate what to do with this one. And how to organize, how also on broader Kurdistan, because, you know, our fate is related to the Rojava, to the Kurdistan of Iran, to the Kurdistan of Turkey. And look at the situation. I think, you know, Dastan will further discuss about the Iranian expansion, the Turkish invasion of Kurdistan region, and then look at the leadership. The leadership and the KRG is completely passive. Not only passive, they are also helping the invasion and the expansion of these two governments that they have not a good record toward the Kurdish people.
Thank you very much, Kamal. It was a very good, what you say, like summary, because it's just too much. I mean, can't even describe the situation in books and books, but really gave very important points with regards to the hope that the young population still have. They want, they never in any way, not for this government, not in probably in the future, as you just you have this hope within this young population, give up to achieve their rights, and probably to an extent, if they have a chance to implement democracy. But however, we have discussed that there is a very kind of dictator or authoritarian regime now is in Erbil, where the KRG people and its leadership, they are probably in a contradict kind of direction. So instead of being together parallel to achieve the same policy and strategy, but probably they to an extent they work against each other. And this is, as you described it, this is really the leadership has created a kind of threat towards the future of the Kurdish people, maybe not in Iraq, but in the whole of Kurdistan. So therefore, there are difficulties to overcome these challenges due to lack of trust. And that trust is really, really important for the government and the people who are ruled by this government. So we were looking for an alternative, see what Hawre can say to us with regards to generally about the aspects of international law in the context of South Kurdistan. There have been a lot of issues in terms especially related to crimes and the international crimes occurred not only after or post 1991, but before 1991 as well. So he's really, I'll leave it for him to exactly what he wants to focus, because it's a very, very big kind and very complex area and subject that is like difficult to cover in 20 minutes or 25 minutes. So the floor is to you, Hawre.
Thank you so much, Hoshman, and thank you so much for having me tonight. I don't know where do you live, and Mr. Kamal already addresses some issues about the legal or societal, political, all of the big issues that we are facing now. In order to understand, the reality in Kurdistan, or in terms of judicial system and law related in Kurdistan, we have to go back to 1981. After the United Nations Security Council resolution number 6088, which gave non-flight zone to the north of Iraq. So then the Iraqi government withdrew all of the governmental and administrative departments in Kurdistan. So in 1991, it was a vacuum. It was no official departments, governmental departments in terms of administration, in terms of legislation, in terms of judicial system in Kurdistan. In 1991, the Kurdistan political parties established the Kurdistan Front, Bari Kurdistani, in order to fill the vacuum. And in 1992, they established the first Kurdistan government, and all of the courts in Kurdistan, it was ruled by the government. So it means like in 1982, there was no separation between powers in the terms of like between administrative, between judicial and executive authorities. Until 1994. In 1994, when the civil war started between the two ruling parties, in Suleimania, PUK established their own government and established their own judicial system, and all of the courts in yellow zone, it was governed. It was controlled by KDP, but in Suleimania, controlled by the PUK political party. And until 1998, in Suleimani, the courts in Suleimania, they didn't have their own court of cassation. So the court of cassation remained in Arbil. So it means from 1994 to 1998, all of the cases in Suleimania, so it was no opportunity to be appealed within the Court of Cassation in Arbil, because it was no communication between both sides, between both zones. After the invasion of Iraq, let me say invasion, because from in terms of legality, it was invasion, not liberation, which some of the Kurdish Kurdish writers say that it's liberation, but it's invasion according to the United Nations Security Council resolution number 1483 in 2003. So after the invasion of Iraq, the government of Kurdistan became one government. So it was like unification between both zones, and the Ministry of Justice became one. In 2006, both judicial system in yellow zone and in green zone became one judicial system, but it was controlled. It was ruled by KRG, because until 2009 we didn't have any legislation to separate the power between legislative and between executive authorities. In 2009, according to the law number 23 for the year of 2007. So the judicial authority became an independent authority in Kurdistan, but all of the judges, prosecutors, and the senior leaders in the judicial system until 2007, they were appointed by the political parties, not by an independent judicial institutions. They were appointed by the political parties until 2011. In 2011, the Kurdistan, what's called in English, the Kurdistan Judicial Institution was established for graduating judges and prosecutors, and until the judicial institution started working from 2011, and until 2021, it has just 3 graduation, which graduated 148 judges. So that's why most of the judges, most of the prosecutors, most of the seniors within the judicial system in Kurdistan, the Judicial Council in Kurdistan, they were appointed during the civil war in Kurdistan. So that's why we have seen many issues for not like the judges did not respect the notions of the legality for respecting human rights according to the international standards. So what I already addressed is the personal capacity, personal impartiality and independency of the judges and prosecutors. But there's another issue in Kurdistan region of Iraq. which is called, let me say, systematic challenges. In Kurdistan, we don't have our own constitution, and we have just Iraqi constitution. In Iraqi constitution, so it's true, it's applicable in Kurdistan region of Iraq, but for the notion of the political, civil, cultural rights, it's applicable in Kurdistan region of Iraq. But for the notion of the separation between powers, legislative, executive, and judicial powers in Baghdad, so it's just about the Iraqi powers. It's just about the Iraqi authorities. It's not about the Kurdistan authorities. Since 2005, there are many meetings for writing Kurdistan constitution. So we have a draft constitution in for Kurdistan, but there are many challenges. There are many provisions within the Kurdistan constitution, which for itself it has potentiality for violating human rights in Kurdistan. Another issue is related to the international human rights standards, which is called the international human rights instruments. Iraq is a party for many international human rights instruments, like International Convention for Civil and Political Rights in 1976, International Convention for Economic Social Rights, so the CEDAW Convention, the Child Convention, the Enforced Disappearance Convention, the Convention for Children, the Convention Against Torture. But one thing is very important here is Iraq, it's right, Iraq is a member state of the international conventions, but Iraq is not a member state for the additional protocols which give us people of the state to send them inquiry to the international human rights committees in Geneva. Like all of the international human rights instruments, they have their own committee for reviewing the inquiries from the people within the member states of the conventions. But in Iraq does not ratify any additional protocols to allow the Iraqi people, including the Kurdish people, to send them their inquiry about any violations, any potential violation, any alleged violations within the territory of Iraq. Another thing is very important is Iraq is not a member state of the Rome Statute, which came into force in 2002. Since 2002, there were many international court crimes or most heinous crimes in Kurdistan. Recently, the ISIS crimes. So the ISIS crimes have been prosecuted according to the anti-terrorism law in Kurdistan, and in Baghdad according to the anti-terrorism law in Baghdad. So it's true, the ISIS organization is a terrorist organization, but they committed core international crimes. They committed the crime of genocide against the Yazidi people, as we have seen many reports from the international organizations like the United Nations Security Council reports, the United Nations Human Rights Council reports. But there is no apparatus, there is no provisions for prosecuting perpetrators for committing core international crimes, the crime of genocide, the war crimes, and the crimes against humanity. One thing is very important that Kurdistan Center for International, if you give me the opportunity to explain what we have done so far and what we want to do it. We have a plan for next 3 years for establishing a foundation for criminalizing core international crimes in Kurdistan. So it's very important for Kurds because we don't have, as we said, we don't have our state, official state, so we don't have our representatives in the international institutions like United Nations, like IOM, like ICE, International Court of Justice, International Criminal Court. So there is another way for internalizing core international crimes to the judicial system in Kurdistan, because we have our own legislative authority, the Kurdistan Parliament. So they can issue like a law for criminalizing core international crimes. So it will prevent any violations in Kurdistan for committing core international crimes in Kurdistan, or maybe like for making accountable our neighbors, which Turkey, Iran, they bombarded Kurdistan and they killed the civilian people here in Kurdistan. So just reporting the violation is not enough, but making efforts towards criminalizing core international crimes. As Kamal Chomani said that about the last verdict of Iraqi federal court. That's another big issue between the central government and the KRI. According to the Iraqi constitution, KRI is one of the federal region in Kurdistan, and it's the only one. And the Iraqi constitution provides some guarantee to KRI, to Kurdistan region of Iraq, but as well as all of the issues, like they have been solved according to the Iraqi constitution. One of them is the how to deal with the sources, with the natural sources. So, and in the Iraqi federal court, there are 2 Kurdish judges. They voted for the judgments for the they voted for the judgment, like KRI does not have power to transport their natural resources. So from legal point of view, it's totally different from political point of view. From legal point of view, Iraq has their power to apply the Iraqi constitution on all of the Iraqi territories. So thank you so much. Maybe if we will have another things, I will address it.
Oh, that's great, Hawre. Thank you for giving us this such wide information with regards to the courts ruled by the government, lack of the rule of law due to lack of separation of power between the 3 main different system of parliament, judiciary, and the government. So as you say, that this was further since its establishment in 1992, the KRG, this was further affected by the civil war, which was erupted in 1994. Further, the unification did not change anything. Not anything, but it didn't resolve the issues in 2006, and the reformation carried out further politicized the judiciary system. Therefore, systematic challenges only applied limitedly. And one of these problems is probably in terms of the international crimes carried out within the KRG and Iraq as a whole, is because maybe, apart from the political issues, Iraq has not ratified some of the conventions, or is not party, for example, of the courts like ICC. So these are the main issues that Hawre mainly covered. Of course, I mean, about the Supreme Court judgment just issued recently by the Iraqi government with regards to the resources, whether the KRG has the right to independently sell the gas and oil resources of Kurdistan regional government to the other international or probably internal companies as well. So now we'll leave it for now with Hawre, and we are going to ask or request Ms. Dastan Jasim, Khatu Dastan Jasim, if she can tell us what she has prepared for us about the current developments in South Kurdistan. She wants particularly focusing on foreign policy aspects, but probably in some way or another touch upon the issues of women's role in the society in South Kurdistan. So the floor is to you, Dastan, please.
Thank you so much, Kak Hoshman, and thanks very much to Kurdakat for this invitation. Thanks also to the input of Kak Kamal and Kak Hawre, which have always, taken on the historical aspect. And the historical aspect is especially important if you look at, southern Kurdistan, the Kurdistan region of Iraq, because the Kurdish question in general has been one that was always shaped by what happened on the international stage. It was shaped by what happened after the First World War. It was shaped by the interest of different superpowers. It was finally changed by, the Cold War, and it was very much shaped, especially when the Kurdistan regional government was founded. It was very much shaped by the fact that that Saddam Hussein was invading Kuwait. And even if you look even before that, the mobilization of
I think we can close our webcam so that Dastan can have a better.
Very sorry, the connection is very bad. Just to repeat that point, like all in all, the Kurdish question, is greatly influenced by issues of international relations, whatever happened in the international sphere. And that is even most evident in the foundation of the Kurdistan region, as Kak Kamal and Kak Hawre have talked about, when it was founded de facto after 1991, after the uprising that is also called Raparin. That was in the context of pretty much Saddam making a big mistake, which was, falling into an 8-year war with Iran, getting really weak, then invading Kuwait, and then being even weaker again. So what is very important is to see that whatever leverage Kurdish parties have had in the past has always somehow been related to conflicts and international struggles that have been happening on the international stage. So it's very important to put Kurdistan region and the developments into a greater framework. I have collected some points that I think are very interesting and important to keep in mind when looking at the Kurdistan regional government and their embedding in the international sphere. The first obvious point is, as Kak Hawre has also talked about, is the issue with ISIS. ISIS is still very much active. It's very much active in the disputed, so-called disputed territories. Those are pretty much the territories between Shengal, Kirkuk, and the province of Diyala, so the city of Khanaqin, and it's all the areas that are disputed between Erbil, between the Kurdistan regional government and the federal government. And we see that hit and run operations by ISIS are continuing there. And it's very, very hard to also bring justice to the people that were perpetrated by ISIS, because as Kak Hawre has already said, there is not very much space to go for these, to go against these cases, to go against these crimes on an international level. And there are attempts to do that, and Kak Hawre has mentioned one of them. But the important thing that we have to keep in mind with ISIS is that this organization has not only existed in Iraq, it has also existed in Syria. And most importantly, the crimes that they committed in an area that is now under the control of the autonomous administration of North and East Syria. So the issue is that if you want to perpetrate these crimes, if you want to collect evidence in these cases, if you really want to make substantive cases against ISIS members that stretch along these two areas, then you also have to think about the question of what is happening with the acknowledgement of the autonomy that the Kurds have actually created in Syria. There is a lot of ISIS fighters that have been doing their crimes there. There's a lot of ISIS fighters that have punished and tortured their Yazidi slaves there on Syrian grounds. And it's very important to, work together with those authorities as well to be able to really have the capacity to go against these crimes, to collect all of this evidence, to work together in law enforcement. So the situation with ISIS is not only connected to the legal situation in federal Iraq and the Kurdistan regional government, but it's also very much connected to the situation in Syria, and it's connected to the acknowledgement or non-acknowledgement of the autonomy that the Kurds have created in Syria. The second point, obviously, is what is kind of the take and the stake of the EU and the US vis-a-vis the Kurdistan regional government. We have seen in the past that, the Kurdistan regional government have been very important allies to both the European Union and the US, especially in the fight against ISIS. But what is most evident now is that, of course, all eyes are on the Ukraine. The issue with Ukraine, however, is very much related to the Kurdistan regional government, because the issue of Ukraine is greatly connected to the energy security of the European Union. And there have been a lot of discussions before whether the Kurdistan regional government should be included in not only regional oil sales and oil deals with Turkey, for example, but should be included in programs and projects like, for example, the Southern Gas Corridor. There has been a recent article published by Fehim Tashtikin, which is very interesting for those that are more interested in that regard. There are great resources of gas actually in the Kurdistan region that could be used, but it needs a lot of infrastructure, a lot of investment to facilitate that, to create the infrastructure that could bring this gas out. And what does that mean? That means in the end that Kurdistan region would have to work even more with Turkey. And as we have seen, the issue is that there has been the Supreme Court ruling of February 15 on the federal level, but there is also a very long-running case of Iraq and in the International Court of Arbitration against Turkey. We should keep that in mind. And it looks like Iraq is winning. It looks like Turkey has to pay at least a $30 billion punishment in this regard. So the issue is, will the energy security question of Europe lead to alternative sources for gas, for example, to be used? And what are those alternative sources? The alternative sources are what comes from Azerbaijan, what comes from Turkey, and that is automatically involving the Kurdistan regional government as well, because they are partners in this regard. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on. Quite frankly, on the EU-US approach, I think the EU has always been a little bit indecisive in their take towards the Kurds in general, because there are very different interests in the European Union. There is countries that are very, critical of Turkey, for example, like France or Cyprus or Greece, but there are also countries that are very much pro-Turkey, which is Germany, and pretty much whether you're pro or against Turkey is also very much influencing how you are acting vis-a-vis the Kurds in general, but also different Kurdish autonomies. So that's a big question to keep in mind. The third point is what is happening with Iran. Not only Turkey is expanding, Turkey is obviously expanding. They're expanding very much. They have launched several military operations. They, since 2016, have successfully expanded their fight against the PKK out of their country. So they have very much spared themselves the trouble in their own country, and they're attacking the PKK, especially from the air. They're attacking them, especially in the Kandi Mountains, but also in the Bradost areas, Metina areas, all of these areas that are between the border of Kurdistan region and Turkey. And they have also have 3 major incursions into the Syrian Kurdish areas in 2017, 2018 in Afrin, and 2019 in Grespi and Serekanye. And the issue is that, Turkey is expanding, but Iran is expanding as well. The issue with Iranian expansion is that it is not as evident. It is not as loudly proclaimed as Turkey is doing it. And Iran has a very different foreign policy approach than Turkey. While Turkey is announcing their excursions very, very loudly, Iran is not doing that. And that is the reason why to this day, even in policy circles, you have to discuss whether the Houthis are actually supported by Iran or not. While this is, I would consider it a fact. Iranian expansion is happening pretty much with proxies, but it's happening pretty much in a very decentralized way. And the expansion that Iran was able to do in the Kurdistan region so far has been done through, the Patriotic Union of Kurdistan. There has always been a lot of connections between them, and there was a lot of Iranian presence in their areas, but they had significant contacts to the KDP as well. And in the fight against ISIS, they have been working very closely with the Peshmerga forces. So the fact that the Iranian-backed Hashd al-Shabi, the Popular Mobilization Forces, have this presence, especially in the disputed areas, and that Iran has a very strong hand there, is due to the security level cooperation. What is going to influence the game there? And also one important point is that this expansion is not only in Iraqi Kurdistan, this expansion is in Syrian Kurdistan as well. And in the areas that are controlled by the Syrian Democratic Forces, we have seen major developments in the Deir ez-Zor area. We have seen more and more Iranian presence there. We have seen revolutionary guards there, but these things are pretty much, in the back of the international discussion. What is going to influence how Iran is going to continue with that as what is going to be the points that are agreed upon in the Vienna Accords. And so far, there is a lot of back and forth to the outside. There's a lot of statements that indicate that there is, still disunity and disagreements between the United States and Iran. But at the end of the day, we have to be honest. The democratic governments in the United States have always been very much pro-Iran. They have always been able to make deals with Iran. And if Iran is going to get this further legitimization and further pushing with success in Vienna, this is going to be, quite influential and quite problematic for the situation in the other countries as well, because that is going to mean that there will be even more material support. If we look at it, Iran is under severe sanctions, and yet they're able to support all of these different militias, support all of these different groups. So that is not necessarily good news. And so we have to see what are the points there. One of the fourth important foreign policy aspect for Kurdistan regional government is actually also their relations between them and the Rojava administration, the administration of Northeast Syria. Because if we look at it, the last negotiations in January that ended in January between the administration of Northeast Syria and the Kurdistan regional government, specifically the KDP, were mediated by the United States. And that is not a good sign. If two Kurdish autonomies are not really able to do politics with each other, to do foreign politics with each other, this is very much troubling. This is very much troubling for the future, and this is very much troubling also for the fight against ISIS. And now they have agreed on reopening the Samalka border also to humanitarian assistance. But if you remember it, one of the conditions of the Kurdistan Democratic Party was that they said we want a license for the Barzani Charity Foundation to work in Rojava, and that is quite troubling. So if anyone is interested in having also a look on the power relation in Kurdistan regional government, you should definitely look at NGOization and how parties are trying to have a strong hand in society and also in foreign politics through NGOs, which is something that they certainly learned from American and European actors that actively started their engagement in the 90s in the Kurdistan region through humanitarian organizations and military assets first. The fourth point definitely would be what is happening in Turkey. That is extremely important. As I said, Turkey has completely switched the area of their fight against PKK to southern Kurdistan, to the Kurdistan region of Iraq, while the fight between the PKK and Turkey was very strong in 2015, 2016 in the North Kurdish cities, like, for example, in Ahmed, in Nusaybin, in Cizre, in Slopi. all of these fights have been pretty much, switched to the mountainous areas and the borders. And this has major repercussions, not the least, this has also a great ecological repercussions. If we look at the situation, the ecological situation of Kurdistan region, it's quite horrible. We have a lot of pollution. We have a horrible situation when it comes to the temperatures. We have summers that are so hot like they have never been before. Climate change is really impacting the Kurdistan region of Iraq, and that is further bolstered by what Turkey is doing. What they're actually doing, for example, to fight against PKK, is that they are deforesting large areas in the mountains of Kurdistan, which has massive repercussions for the CO2 levels in the Kurdistan region. And on the other side, they are also causing the massive displacement of people in the rural areas, all the people that are farmers, that are keeping this land alive, that are, also curbing production in this area. And that is very, very dangerous. So the war that Turkey is really leading against the Kurdish areas, that they are leading together in cooperation with the Kurdistan regional government, which Kamal Chomani and I have recently also written an article about in the commentaries, as a big problem, socially, militarily, in terms of foreign relations, because clearly the reason why Kurdistan regional government cannot get to agree with Rojava is also the strong cooperation that is happening between Turkey and the Kurdistan regional government, and also on the ecological level, the Turkish war is greatly influencing the people. In the end, what we can say is, Kurdistan regional government has a lot of connections. They've worked with Americans, they've worked with European countries. They have a lot of resources, there's a lot of opportunities. But at the end of the day, the problem that Kamal and Hawre have talked about, the problems of democratization and institutionalization, they are also greatly influencing how foreign policy is happening. If you do not have clarity on where Kurdistan region is institutionally, vis-a-vis federal Iraq, and how they are unified between themselves, you are going to have a diplomacy that is only going to happen over the parties. And that is a great problem. The foreign countries, foreign actors, international organizations can be very much helpful when it comes to democratization at home. We have seen that with the case of the Badinan detainees. There's a lot of international organizations that work on that, and without them, there would not be really a lot of information about the case. But on the other side, the issue is, who are they talking to? Are they talking to foreign ministers and a foreign ministry that is legitimized by the people? Or are they talking to foreign relations officials that are put in by the parties and that no one has voted for? And that is the great problem that we're actually facing right now. So whatever foreign relations are happening, they are not really much helping the society if they are not based on democratization and institutionalization. In the end, I think the great issue with Kurdistan region is there is a lot of potential for the people to change the political situation. We have a community that is so young, not many countries have such a young population. More than 60% of the people are under the age of 35. They are really creative people. I mean, I'm here right now, and these are really the most inspiring people that I'm talking to. They are working hard. They are really taking a lot. They are not given a lot of credit, especially the women here. In 2022, we have had 8 femicides so far. The last one was the case of a 21-year-old woman that was killed in Suleimania, and that was burned alive by her husband. There has been public protest against these things. But in the end, many people are not able to voice their protest in the way they want, because simply there is just a lot of security force obstruction of these kind of things. We have seen protests by the students. We have seen protests in November and December. We have had student protests last week. We have protests of the 12th grade students also last week. There is a lot of mobilization going on. But at the end of the day, the big problem of Kurdistan region is Kurdistan region's economy is based on oil, and that oil is controlled by foreign companies. Oil is not something that you can just take out of the ground and sell it to someone on the street. It is a means of production that is very, very hard to take on for a group if they would take on power. So the problem in thinking about systemic change in Kurdistan region is the economic problem. Even if this new generation is going to take over, even if they would create a new kind of political system, what about all the deals that we have? What about all the deals that we don't even know about? There are so many economic deals. There are so many oil deals that we have no idea about. No one is forced to, make it transparent. We haven't had a budget since 2013. So the question is, even if women, if young people could take up, the question is, how could they materialize this power? And that is the big problem that I see. But at the end of the day, for those people that have, watched this and that are interested in the Kurdistan region of Iraq, what I can really say is that this is a population that has repeatedly been able to resist. They have been able to resist against Saddam. They have been able to resist against ISIS. They are resisting against patriarchy. They are resisting against a lot of things. And what is very important, this is a note for me, like as an activist, not as a political scientist, is to invest in the young people and invest in the people that are independent and not in the parties. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dastan Khan. It was a very comprehensive coverage with regards to internal and external policy of the KRG, as well as the Kurdish people in general. You clearly talked about how the KRG is shaped by the international, by the changes within the international system, as well as in the region. Also the problems with ISIS still carrying out activities in its area of control. Also that the main issue of the KRG now, its mineral resources and the oil production has created so many issues, not for the KRG as an entity, but its people as well. So the role of the neighborhood countries such as Iran and Turkey been very negative, especially in terms of expanding their not just probably their authority, but at some point territorial control over the areas populated by the Kurdish people. And therefore that foreign policy is in some point maybe a little bit more silent by the Iranian side, but could have the same impact as a whole. But the main thing is we need to have a really good connection between the two emerging sub-state groups in Iraq and in Syria, controlled mainly by the Kurdish population. But we have a problem with that because now Turkey has changed its strategy to fight against the PKK, not in the Kurdish controlled or populated areas in north of Kurdistan, but it has tried to fight to take the fight away from its borders into the south of Kurdistan, which is to have really bad impact in terms of environment as well as demography. So yeah, we will put it that democratization is really connected with the foreign policy, but there are still hopes because we have a lot of young Kurdish population in south of Kurdistan. We cannot give up hope. So on the other side, you also touched upon the crimes badly happened are happening against the Kurdish women for many social reasons, and we have a problem in terms of the lack of transparency about the selling of oil, and so, but still overall hope. So that's the main thing that we can rely on it in order for us to be able to develop the Kurdistan regional government, because as Kamal and Hawre put it, that it's the really belongs to the people. So mainly the current rulers of the Kurdistan regional government belong to few probably families and not the Kurdish people as a whole. So if anyone has any questions within this panel, then we can ask the speakers about their area that they have already covered. I do have some questions, but I will give the floor to our friends if anyone would like to ask any question, please. If you don't have an, oh yes, sorry, I couldn't see. Helosh, please, yeah.
First of all, thank you very much for this panel, and I'm a very huge fan of yours and Khudijwa Razibi in Kurdish. And this was really informative. And I would like to ask about the electoral system of the KRG, because people that are, pro KDP, pro PUK, they always argue that the KRG, the government is democratic because it is elected. And so if the government is elected by the people, this is what the people want. And how does the electoral system work, and what challenges do small parties or oppositional parties have to succeed? Thank you.
Yeah, I think this is directly, it's directed towards Kamal, maybe in terms of political side of it, but to some extent in terms of legal side of it. Probably Hawre can also give some or elaborate on that if he could later. Kamal,
yeah, thank you. So thanks for your question. It's very, very good question, and especially as you said, so many people will claim that this government is legitimate because of we have free and democratic elections. So first of all, let's talk about the electoral commission that we have. The electoral commission is divided. It's called Independent Commission for Elections and Referendum in Kurdistan, which is not independent, which this commission has been, there are, I think, 10 people, 10 members. Hawre may know better. So these 10 people or 7 people, I don't know exactly, they are divided between the political parties. So political parties, they have appointed their own members over there. And these political parties, mainly KDP and PUK, including the Change Movement and 2 members from the Islamists. So how can you talk about a free and fair elections when the independent commission based on the Kurdistan region parliament laws is not independent? The first thing is, that we can question the elections is the commission that's not independent, that's not lawful. And secondly, so how people vote? Okay, people are free to vote, of course. However, let's not forget the population of about 6 million people, 1 million or 400,000 people are governmental employees or being paid or are on the KRG payroll. And all of them, about 300,000 people, are within the security Peshmerga and also pension of the security system in the Kurdistan region. The KDP and PUK force all the security members, including police, Asayish, and the Peshmerga, to vote for them. Not only them, also the families to vote for them. So it's not a free election. It's not free at all because people are not free to vote. So if we come to the public sector within the government, again, each single director of the offices in the Kurdistan region, almost each of them, I can say, including the heads of schools, are appointed. The majority of them are appointed by the KDP and PUK. And they are also assigned to threaten the members or the staff, the personnel of the official governmental office in the Kurdistan region to vote for the KDP and PUK. And let alone how the entire media is controlled by the KDP and PUK, and the entire media that they try disinform, misinform, and also a lot of fake news. In the meantime, the entire monopoly. So all this, the opposition parties, they don't have much resources to advertise, to do the campaigns for themselves. And the entire media sphere in the Kurdistan region, the big corporations like Ruda, Kurdistan 24, Kurdsat, etc., all of them are paid by the political parties, and all of them are funded by our own public money, our own oil in the Kurdistan region. So again, there's a lot of disparity between the opposition parties and the ruling party. And in the meantime, during the election days, once the KDP and PUK realized that they are not winning the elections, then they changed the results, either through electronically, or they just send their own Peshmerga on security forces to vote or to vote two times or three times, etc., etc. Let alone that the entire cities during the elections will be militarized. And when we talk about militarized, it's not about to feel that this police or this security force member or this Peshmerga belong to the Kurdistan people. They protect the interests of the KDP and PUK. You are not free. You don't feel free to vote once you realize that beyond the box of ballot boxes, there are people who may threaten you, who may arrest you. And I have been in the elections. I have covered lots of elections until 2018 that I was in Kurdistan. In each single election, hundreds of people are being threatened, beaten, including the observers of political parties within the ballot boxes. And there are almost, during the elections, there are almost both KDP and PUK threatening each other to resume another civil war if they lose or if they don't win, something like this. So in this situation, you cannot talk about free and fair elections. And last point, which I want to mention here, is the economic resources. So financial resources. The KDP and PUK, they are using the government, the financial resources, the oil resources, the gas resources, completely to either that they have established the clientele system. Like, for example, in my hometown, Choman, the government has not been able to establish a single center for the youth. However, the KDP and PUK, they have, I don't know exactly, 1 to maybe 5, 6 buildings, 6 offices for their political parties, let alone their militia and Peshmerga. And in this situation, so everything is politicized, everything is militarized, and everything is being used and manipulated by the two political parties and families to win elections, either to buy the opposition members, buy the media, buy the journalists, or threaten them, or maybe just, as we know that the Kurdistan region is a clientele system where in a way, directly or indirectly, thousands or hundreds of thousands of people are being paid by the KDP and PUK, and this is not voluntarily. Of course, in return, you should also vote for them, or you should sell your loyalty for them. So I completely disagree with those who say that there is a legitimate government or the elections are free and fair. However, if you say that there are some people protesting, there are some sort of journalists, independent activists, and also sometimes the opposition parties are winning some seats. Okay, let's not forget our Kurdistan region people, I don't want to talk about any other nations, but our people, they have sacrificed, they have shed blood for freedom, and they are still ready to sacrifice a lot not to lose the entire freedom that they have, and they are struggling, they are fighting. And look at our friends in the prison right now. The KDP, the Masroor Barzani have put them in prison. These people, despite all the threats, despite all this, threatening in the prison, torture, yet you talk to them, they're inspiring thousands of other people. They're inspiring lots of people. So what I want to say, it's not a democratic system that we have the reason of our people to fight for freedom or being outspoken or being critical. It is the bravery of people, our people, is the principle that we believe, and it is the life that we aspire to have in the Kurdistan region.
Thank you very much.
Let me give my point of views in terms of law. I was working with European Union electoral mission for observing the Iraqi election as a legal assistant. So first of all, there is no international standards for giving legitimacy for the election, like it's legitimate or non-legitimate, like 20% or 80%. There is no international standards. There is no international percentage. First of all. Second, since 1992, we have seen all of the elections that they have not taken place on time. So sometimes, according to the political parties' interests, they extended the deadline, so they extended the dates of the election. The third point is, it's obvious. Most of the political parties, they have their own sources, money, in order to manipulate, in order to impact it on the population. And we don't have independent media like the people in Kurdistan they can rely on. So all of the issues in Kurdistan, so it's intertwined. It's not like, for example, in the previous election in Iraq, the political parties, they spread the rumors like, if you go to the votes or not, so there's no change. Your vote can make no changes. Why? Because the political parties, they have their own voters. Like in Iraq, the percentage of the participation, it was 42 officially, but unofficially it was around 25. So the political parties, they enforce their voters to go to the voters, but the independent people, they spread the rumors like, if you go to the votes or not, so there's no change according to your vote. So there are many issues. I don't know why, but there are many challenges in Kurdistan.
Thank you very much. There was very good discussion, and it was thank you for the answers, Kamal and Hawre. Very greatly pointed out the main points why the elections in KRG in some way or another could be, as you say, a sham, right? And corrupted. Has anyone? Okay, please, yeah, Mayrika, please, yeah. Ask your question. The floor is to you.
Hi, thanks to everyone for their speech, and thanks to Kodakat for organizing this event. So everything feels quite rigid at the moment in Kurdistan region of Iraq, and I was just wondering, Dastan did say that a lot of the population is young and they're quite inspiring, so that's a bit more positive and it seems a bit more flexible, hopefully. But what do the speakers think for the future in terms of the judicial system, human rights, foreign policy, whether Kurdistan can have a bit more freedom from Iraq, and in terms of women's rights as well? Do they feel optimistic, or do they feel like it's still going to be as rigid as it is? Thank you.
Yeah, maybe Dastan.
Probably is direct to everyone. and everyone can give a comment with a discussion. And
yeah, well, I mean, I'm spending a lot of time with young people right now, since I am here, and I'm also working on the campus, and in general, I would still consider myself quite young. It's a big question, and I will tell you where the difference lies. The difference lies between those that still have some ideological backing and those that do not. And there is 3 groups. There is the first group, which is the religious people. A lot of young people are actually religious, especially those that are from the lower class. They look for religion to give them some backing, to give them some identity, to give them some hope. And those, have different groups. They have some more reactionary groups, but there's also like religious people that are oppositional, because they kind of have this idea of, there is a greater meaning to why we're on this planet, so we should also do something good about it. So there is this group. The second group is obviously those people that have no ideological backing, those people that do not believe in anything anymore. There's a lot of young people that are like this, that unfortunately become fatalists. This is very evident in the suicide rates, actually. Suicide is a big problem in Iraq in general, and also in the Kurdistan region. And you see it very, very often. And that's something very unfortunate. So yes, there are young people that do not believe in stuff, but there is a always existing and ever-growing group of young people that do have more leftist and progressive ideals, that also engaged very much in other struggles, that very much engage with the struggles of other Kurds, for example, that draw inspiration from Rojava, that draw inspiration from, for example, the HDP also, someone like Selahattin Demirtas is a big idol. So there is these people that definitely, get that kind of ideological backing. I think the issue is, and it's not only in Kurdistan, that is like in general, if you're facing a crisis, and I mean, we're not only facing crisis in Kurdistan region, we're facing crisis internationally, believing in change and having a general idea of why we are here and where we should go is helping people in general, and especially young people, to not lose sight. That's why at young age, people are easily manipulated into also extremist beliefs. And I guess this pattern is also evident in southern Kurdistan.
Thank you, Dastan Khan, for this well-put explanation. Kamal, Hawre, do you have any comments to say?
Yeah, if I may add a few things with regard to, I think this system cannot continue. At some point, even if not people overthrow the system destroys itself by itself, because it has been established on the foundations of corruption, patronage system, clientelist system. However, the KRG cannot provide resources for the patrons that they have, that for the clients that they have created, and for the Peshmerga, for the security, etc., etc. And this system. However, this system, if the KDP and PUK, the Talabani and Barzani family, changes or reforms anything of this system, they destroy themselves. And there is a joke, I don't know if it is true or not, but it's just like, once I think it's Masoud Barzani is asked, why don't you do reforms? He says, if I do reforms, no one will be around me. Of course, Masoud Barzani is the most corrupt person. However, this is also true. So the KDP and PUK, any reforms will end themselves, will end the system that they have created. However, there are also opportunities. It's not only the Kurdistan region people that use that Dastan talks about, and that I also mentioned before, that they want a change. It's the entire people in Iraq. Look at the October protests in Iraq. Despite that, there might be some criticism. However, there is a huge demand of change from Basra to Zakho. And somehow people in the Kurdistan region, like the young generation, as well as in other parts of Iraq, they don't buy the sectarian nationalist Barzani and Maliki and Sadr ideologies. They want a real change. And the population, like, you know, each year the Kurdish universities, they are like about 30,000 new graduates. The new graduates, they want jobs. Since 2013, that the KRG stops employing the public servants, they have not been able to create any jobs. How can you, like, you know, even the families cannot support the youth anymore. So the youth, they want to change. And also the system has been glorified and supported by the international community. But let's not forget, the US is withdrawing from Iraq. And also the attention from the US and EU countries is no more on the Middle East, including the Kurdistan region. And first, they have an Iraqi policy. They try to deal with Iraq rather than with the Kurdistan region. And also the withdrawal is weakening the KDP and PUK. And there might be some also real change in the region. Just imagine if Erdogan loses the elections in 2023. So there will be, it will weaken the KDP to a great extent. In the meantime, if there will be like the nuclear deal revived in Iran with Iran, so again, Iran's aggressive policies in Iraq, I think it will be somehow turning into some economic cooperation, because they also need. These changes in the region will also reshape the dynamics of the politics in the Kurdistan region. And it is true that there are a huge demand within the Kurdish youth population for a change, but also there's a huge demand and also some sort of debate within the former politicians and also some politicians within the two political parties that there should be a reform. And we are looking forward to the next elections. Although I'm very, very disappointed from the political parties, but there will be a change. And the problem is not that whether we will have mobilization and organization, but the problem is whether once there will be this sort of organization, this sort of new opposition party in the Kurdistan region, whether they will be accepted by the ruling parties or not. Because, you know, the KDP and PUK, they have completely controlled the security apparatus in Kurdistan, and they are not ready to nationalize. And just recently, the 5 countries, UK, US, Germany, France, and the EU countries, they asked it officially and publicly for the first time that they have been supporting the Peshmerga forces for a long time. They want nationalization. So imagine the Kurdish parties, the Kurdish government is unable to nationalize, professionalize the Peshmerga forces. There are external forces asking you. It's a huge shame for our government, for the political parties. However, this support will also not continue. And imagine if the international community stops supporting the KDP and PUK militia. They will be dismantled in a matter of days, because apart from, you know, there's a huge demand within the Peshmerga forces as well that they should be nationalized, that they should protect the Kurdish population and the Kurdistan interests, not the family and political party interests. So all in all, I think we are in a very, very difficult, desperate, very hopelessness moments within the Kurdistan region. For years, the Kurdistan region has never been as such. However, within this hopelessness, there are hopes. There are people really debating, and I see a lot of traffic within the former politicians, young politicians, that let's do something. And of course, I'm not that hopeful. However, there will be something, and with the change that are happening, there will be something in the future.
Thank you, Kamal. Hawre, do you have anything to say, or?
No, thank you so much. Just one comment I wanted to raise from legal point of view, like maybe Kurdakat, they can do something about it, which is related to the ISIS. Recently in Germany, in France, in Belgium, in some other countries, there is a principle which is called universal jurisdiction. So it means the universal jurisdiction principle gives power to the Germany, to the EU status, Germany or France or Belgium, to prosecute perpetrators, which we have seen many applications recently. For example, in 2021, December 2021, in Frankfurt court. So there's a judgment in the Frankfurt court. It recognized the genocide against the Yazidi community. So the defendant was Iraqi, and he committed crimes, the crime of genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity against the Iraqi people. And he committed crimes inside Iraq, but Germany has power to prosecute all of the perpetrators around the world who have committed international crimes outside Germany even. So maybe this issue, we as the Kurdish community in diaspora, we can focus on.
That's brilliant. Thank you. Thank you very much for your comment as well. Jasim, please, yeah. You have raised your hand if you have any questions.
Yes, I have one question for Dastan. Dastan, can you give a short overview about women in politics and society in South Kurdistan? Because when you look to the Kurdish parties in Turkish Kurdistan or Turkish occupied Kurdistan and in Rojava, then you see a lot of women. When you have a look on politicians and pictures of politicians in South Kurdistan, there are only a few women, or we have also a lot of pictures without women. So maybe you can give a short overview about it.
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, indeed, you know, in all 4 parts of Kurdistan, women have played an great role when it comes to the liberations. And, you know, I often disagree. There are some people that say, you know, there is not really a real history of women resisting in Bashur, but that's not the case. There's a lot of them there. A lot of independent ones were there. If we look at the also Iraqi Communist Party, for example, in the 50s and 60s, they had a lot of important women. And, you know, Layla Qasim was one of the first, Kurdish women fighting for the Kurdish cause and dying because of it. There's definitely a history of that. But with women's issues, it's like queer issues, it's like environmental issues, a lot of other issues as well. If it's only about representation and not political change, it will not really help. There are women. I mean, Hero Ibrahim Ahmed is a woman. You know, Bayan Sami Abdurrahman is a woman. But this is not the Kamal has to laugh. But these are not, you know, it's not a representation of a normal woman, the working class woman. Actually, there is a very interesting phenomenon. We have increasing privatization of the labor market because, you know, a lot of young people especially cannot be put into the private sector anymore because they don't have money, right? We know that there is a big crisis because of that. A lot of women are actually going into the private sector. So what we see is that in the private sector, they are treated very badly. And on top of their oppression as women, there is capitalist oppression of them. Many of them are married, and while their men are working as well, they work as well, and they have to take care of the household. So it's very much gendered. Politics is very much gendered. Also in Kurdistan region, there should be more representation of women. But the women that make it to the big positions are also just like the people in the electoral committee, just like the judges, just like the Peshmerga, just like the people that are voting for the parties. They are collected by the parties. They are recruited by the parties. A lot of the women that are influential are the wife, the daughter, the mother, the aunt of somebody. That is most evident. And that is the big problem. What we see is that also with women's issues, there is some political lobbying happening. I mean, if you have, I mean, Masroor Barzani says he is afraid of the rising numbers of femicides. You have Kumat Albani and his wife that are very famously doing stuff for women. But then how much can women be supported in a capitalist system? How much can women be supported in a system that is exploiting them on many other levels? And that's a thing, if we want to have female representation, there is definitely space for more female representation. But in my opinion, in my activistic opinion, it should be a representation that is a representation also of the lower classes, and that is intersexual, that is intersectional, and that is, you know, that is what we see in Rojava. There was an inspiration for a lot of Kurdish women. And also what needs to happen in Kurdistan region is that this female representation goes in line with queer representation. If we remember, the first very, very known case this year of a femicide was that of a trans woman, which was Doski Azad. She was killed for being a trans woman. And many organizations, many people that call themselves feminists are, for example, exclusive of queer people. They do not see trans women as women. And that is a big problem. There is a queer community in Kurdistan. These women do exist. They are women just like us, and they should be represented as well. But there is no representation of women without systemic change.
That's great. Thank you very much. Very good answer. So I probably have some questions as well, but I will not start this time in chronological order. Probably I will start from the other way around with Dastan Khan. Yeah, with this current political order or disorder, however you put it, how far the KRG can achieve its foreign policy objectives and strategy with that clearly serves the Kurdish people in South Kurdistan? What do you think?
I mean, for that, this is setting the precondition that the foreign policy interest of KRG is the same than the policy interest of the normal people. And I think that is not the case. That is not happening anymore. I said this recently in a discussion that we had on the situation with a new Iraqi government formation. There is a Kurdish interest. Being Kurdish is still something which puts you in danger, which makes you discriminated against, which, you know, takes you your status. Being Kurdish is, you know, it's still a condition, it's a political condition that causes and brings oppression. But it's also a class question. Someone who is, you know, living in the west side of Erbil and is the son or the daughter of a, you know, Mas'ul, someone who is like a high influential person, they have a different foreign policy interest than the child of a Mas'ul in the green zone, to be honest. And those have, again, a different policy interest than a simple worker in Kafri or Said Sadiq or in Rania. They just have a different interest. So I would say the big problem is that there is there has been a huge proxy war going on in Iraq. We have seen this in First World War. We have seen this in Cold War. We have seen this in the post-Cold War phase. We have seen it now with a big, you know, fight between Turkey and Iran. And what we see is crystal clear. You have the Iran camp, which is, you know, which is people like Nouri Maliki, which is people from the Badr organization, which is people that are simply from the pro-Iranian camp, and PUK is part of that. And on the other side, I mean, Halbusi has visited Erdogan now, right? There is great Turkish influence in the disputed areas. There is Turkish influence also in the Turkmen parties. The Turkmen parties have traditionally not been very strong. Now they are very, very strong. They're actually saying they want to, you know, set the governor for Kirkuk. You have KDP in this alliance. You have Muqtada Sadr in this alliance. So when there is some Kurdish oppositionals that pretend like if Kurdish politics would look more towards Baghdad, they can get more democratization. There is no democratization with those political actors as well. It's not like the ones that are sitting in Baghdad are much better than those that are in Erbil. They have their militias as well. It's a proxy game as well. So the issue is, with the current situation, the question is not what foreign policy interest KRG has, but what the parties do have. And traditionally, there is always someone behind the Kurdish parties. If it was for the political interest of the Kurdish people themselves, I would tell you the answer to that is in the Vienna Accords on the one side and the elections next year in Turkey. The elections will be very important for the new government in Turkey. It will be very important for how they will set their budget for the new for the coming times, and how they will set their military budgets. And it will greatly influence whether they will continue with these very expensive foreign excursions, which is those in Rojava, which is those in Bashur, or whether they will have a oppositional government that will not do that. But for that, I do not see a chance, because we have seen that İYİ Party, CHP, all other oppositional parties, they're also in favor of war against Kurdistan. And that's the big issue. At the end of the day, although Kurdistan region is independent, it's all connected to bigger powers.
Thank you very much for very realistic answer. And it's very kind of what is expected exactly by probably most of the good politicians or academics or intellectuals. I am with you. Kak Hawre, my question to you is, with the lack of separation of power within the KRG, also with the lack of the rule of law, with the politicization of the judiciary system in south of Kurdistan, what's next? What could be done in order to improve the legal system? And especially in relation to the crimes committed by ISIS against, for example, many less powerful groups such as Kakis, Yazidis. As we know that, there was a kind of some attempt in order to establish a court within the KRG or maybe in Iraq, but that didn't go ahead for many political reasons, or maybe for other legal reasons as well. What do you think?
First of all, in 2017, the United Nations Security Council established an organization, which is a part of the United Nations Security Council, which is called UNITAD, for collecting evidences in Iraq about the ISIS fighters, which ISIS fighters committed crimes. But I had 3-4 meetings with UNITAD about how to establish an international court for ISIS crimes. One thing that's very important is UNITAD so far did not share any evidence with the Iraqi courts. Why? Because in Iraq, there is a capital punishment within the Iraqi laws. And that's against the United Nations mandates. So that's why they collected evidences for international, like potential international courts. Another thing is, within the ISIS fighters, there are many foreign fighters. They came from Germany, they came from France, they came from UK, but the EU status, they don't want to bring their fighters to be prosecuted in Germany, in France, in UK. They left the issue for the Iraqi people in Iraq, for the Kurdish people in Kara, and for Kurdish people in Rojava. And as you know, Iraq is not a member state of the International Criminal Court, ICC, so there is no jurisdiction for ICC to apply their power for prosecuting ISIS fighters. But Iraq can ask the ICC to prosecute ISIS fighters here in Iraq, but it seems like Iraq does not want to invite the ICC to implement or to give the power for prosecuting ISIS fighters. There's just one option, like Iraq should establish a hybrid court between United Nations and between Iraqi government, which is called a hybrid court. It's not like we have seen in 2005, IHT, Iraqi High Tribunal, which was established in 2005 for prosecuting Saddam Hussein and his colleagues, because it was purely staffed or governed by the Iraqi government. So in last year, the Kurdistan parliament, they wanted to establish a Kurdistan or a Kurdish tribunal in Arbil. They invited me to give them our views or our center's view about the statute. So the law was written in Kurdish language and we translated into English language. We shared with our connectionists, but we totally against establishment any kind of international crimes which totally staffed like by Iraqi people, because we don't have expertise for prosecuting core international crimes. It's new. It's new for globally. It's new, not just for the Kurdish, not just for the Iraqis. So we need for any kind of establishment of a hybrid court or international tribunals, we need this support from international community. But there is a room so far for establishing a hybrid court, so we can advocate it.
Thank you very much, Hawre, and Dastan Khan as well. Kamal, as Dastan probably has just maybe few minutes left to be with us, so I will ask you just to answer in general. With this current political system within the KRG, and as we have seen that there have been a lot of disappointments with the opposition parties established in the past 10 or 15 years in Kurdistan. How do you see the future of political system? Can it be changed at some point, or is there any way that not to shed blood, for example, another civil war happened between the Kurds, but gradually, democratically transition from the current into a more rigorous and systematic government, which is probably representing to an extent the grassroots people as well?
Yeah, so, after the Washington agreement between the two parties after the civil war, so we have been waiting for this transition. And this transition never happened, although after 2003, we had big hopes that we will have a democracy. However, during the Masr Barzani, so this transition is further getting toward the authoritarian regime, and also somehow PUK also helping for that. However, right now, people have realized better than any other days that this authoritarianism doesn't work in the Kurdistan region. And first, within the Kurdistan region is not helping the Kurdish people. To deal with Baghdad is not helping Kurdish people. And also we have seen how this authoritarianism, especially Masr Barzani, is trying to do anything to win Erdogan's support and loyalty, even going against his cousin. After all, also international community, they are not ready to welcome Masr Barzani. He has been twice in Europe. He has not been welcomed well. He has been firing 2 PR companies in London just to promote his ugly image. He has not been successful. So people have also realized, like or not, we need the Western support. We need the EU and United States support. And we have benefited from them a lot. And we need that. So under Masr Barzani, we are probably losing this. So all in all, despite Masr Barzani is leading to authoritarianism, however, within the political parties, within the former politicians and the activists, there is a debate that we should do something. And I have never been so much, pessimistic. I am optimistic. And I think soon or late, we will have a sort of government, at least the kind of government that we had, where there was a space for freedom of expression, where there was a space for political opposition maneuvers, and we would not think of an authoritarian regime. So I think there will be sooner or later, there will be some changes in the political dynamics, and for the good, not for the bad.
Thank you very much, Kamal. So at the end, it's a good hope, at least from all the sides, and especially with taking a good advantage of our Kurdish young generation. And we look forward to really not to be disappointed and to support them in every way we can. So the support is not always money. It's more the kind of moral support is more important in some situations. Although that the life of the Kurdish people, unfortunately, is jeopardized for many political and economic advantages by some individuals within these Kurdish political parties and ruling authorities in the KRG. In the end, I just want to thank you, thanks Jasim and everyone else participated in this seminar and meetings. It's very fruitful, and I hope that we can repeat these type of seminars time and time, just to update not only ourselves, but also to the Kurdish people who may, not all of them, not many, unfortunately, speak the language of English, but this is probably mainly directed to those who are interested in the Kurdish politics and in Kurdish subject in outside of Kurdistan area. So I want to thank you again, and you have a lovely day ahead of you, and wish you all the best and success. So from my side, I would have to say goodbye to you, and probably Dastan, this is mainly because Dastan needs to go, and it was good to see you as well in person, but unfortunately it wasn't face to face. It was kind of on the internet, but hopefully in the near future we can see each other. And if anyone has any comments or any last comments, please say so. No one has any comments? Great. Thank you very much, and hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.